My name is Ketaki Ghate, and so I'm here just to maybe brief you about the guidelines for the mass plantations drive. Yeah, so we have this consultancy named Oikos, and basically we work into ecological land management. Me and my friend Manasi started it 15 years back just to work for nature conservation and ecological restoration on private lands. And that's how I know Praveen. We've been working on his land for last 3-4 years. And today's topic is basically about mass plantation drive. So the monsoon is at the doorsteps and everyone is like, okay, let's do plantation, and everyone does it like in their own way. And many times we always, hear such kind of jokes that some politician comes and he plants the same sapling in the same pit, yeah, because the plants are not growing that well. So what's really going wrong and how to correct it? So we'll just go through it very quickly. So what is the scientific approach for plantation? So if you see, basically the species and where we do plantation are the two main things that we need to look at. So the first point is all about the diversity. So if you look at India, we have 11 different biogeographic zones, and we have more than 17,000 plant species which are flowering on this land. But even then, we just use only 15, 20, maximum 50 species for plantations. And when it comes to mass plantations drive, you must have heard of this Nilgiri, Subabur, Gliricidia, Gulmohar, right? These are the common species which are used. But if you look at the diversity, we are really killing the original potential of this particular land. Then the next thing which always goes wrong is the monoculture. Mono is single and culture is cultivation. Yeah, so we always use 1 or 2 species and we wash off the entire landscape with 1 or 2 species. But whereas if you go in forest, every 1 meter you see different species. So forest is like full of diversity. So we exactly convert that forest like field, or we try to recreate forest, but it doesn't happen because of monoculture, because only one single species is there. And in forest exactly, it's a reverse. There are so many species, there are thousands of species, and with each of the species there is some kind of faunal species which is associated. So which is absent, totally absent in such kind of monoculture. If you go on our Pune hills and if you see this just single layer of these trees, you see only hardly 2 or 3 types of birds and just few insects. And as you go, if you go in Western Ghats where its original forest is protected, there you see like say hundreds of birds are there, there are reptiles, there are mammals, so it's teeming with wildlife. So you can't recreate forest with monoculture, so you must go for diversity. So of course, much more meaningful way is to do plantations with the native forest, or which would mimic forest. And here with the ecological restoration of natural resources like soil, water and biodiversity around it. So this is not only about plantation, but we also need to take care of soil moisture, water conservation and also biodiversity around it. So these are the simple steps, and we'll go through all these 5 steps one by one. So the first is know your region. So in India, where are you really doing your plantation? What is the kind of vegetation that you have? What is the forest type? So as per rainfall zone, climate and topography, we have different kinds of forest. Say if it is Pune, we have mixed deciduous kind of forest, which should be here. If you go a little west towards Pune in Western Ghats, it should have some kind of semi-evergreen forest. If you go towards east of Pune, it should have scrub to dry deciduous kind of forest. So as per climate and rainfall, this original vegetation changes. So we must know that what is the original vegetation in the area where we wish to do plantation. Then we can also find it out from secondary data that will give you an idea about the species growing naturally and easily in your area. Yeah, so there are, say for example, gazetteers are there, which are prepared by British, if you know. You can just Google and you would find gazetteers for Pune district, Satara district or maybe many districts. Yeah, so in that they have tried to list the native species from that particular area which have been there since hundreds of years. And if at all any non-native or planted species are there, they are mentioned separately. So you would know that what kind of trees are originally growing in your area. But as you know, most of the time that original vegetation is lost or degraded due to human interference. Yeah. So since it is not today's topic, we'll not talk about those external pressures. But because of that, this original vegetation is degraded to something else. So even if you have a list of species with you, which should have been here on your land, you just keep it with you. We'll just assess next steps and then we'll come back to that list. So it is necessary to follow the next step. And what is next step? Assess your own land. So is the soil ready to support your plants that you have in your list? Because many times soil is so degraded, it is so poor, it lacks fertility, it lacks soil moisture. So even if you plant certain species, the soil is not able to grow it, right? So plants definitely grow very well in very nice fertile soil. They also grow well in soft murum, but they don't really grow well in hard murum or rocks. Yeah. But so even if fine soil is there, that is not enough. So soil has to be really live. Marathit आम्ही त्याला जिवंत माती म्हणतो. If at all soil is really live, that is, it should have enough organic matter, nutrients and microbes. So just soil particles are not enough. Say for example sand, it is just like sand otherwise, if it is devoid of organic matter and microbes. Yeah. So if your soil has organic matter, it retains soil moisture, it has enough microbes, then you can definitely go for plantations immediately. But if your soil doesn't have all of this and it is very dry, nothing is growing on it, even in summer, there is no vegetation there, not even grasses, then you need to go to the next step. And what is next step? This is exactly what is very necessary, that plan for ecological restoration and then do plantation. So what is ecological restoration? It's basically to improve strength of soil to have vegetation, to improve its own regenerating capacity so that it can naturally have vegetation, and also it can maybe facilitate the plants that you really plant in that particular soil. So normally, as you see in this photograph, generally plantations are done on totally barren areas. Yeah, right. So many times those areas itself, they are not really suitable for plantation. So the first thing that you need to do, so these are two sub steps that we suggest here. So better approach is to conserve soil moisture and then start planting. So here the next step is to protection to the land. So it needs to be protected totally. Many times whenever we do mass plantation drive, we never consider about the protection. So we just keep on planting the species which are never eaten by cattle, but soil doesn't really grows it. So the plants are like remain of the same height through many years. So if you protect the land, we'll see what happens to it, and also the selection of species. So let's go to this 3A point, protection to the land. So assure total protection from fire, grazing and cutting. So these are three main enemy when it comes to India. If you do plantation, you must protect the land from all these three factors. Then conserve existing natural structure is the main thing. So many times when we do plantations, clearing is done, and architects many times they do that. Yeah. So whatever existing thorny, shrubby clusters are there, we think हे सगळं जंगली आहे, काढून टाकायचं. So we tend to remove the existing natural vegetation and then do plantation. So here the ecological approach suggests that we must retain the existing natural structure. Many times we also level the land or clear the land. So even that leveling is not suggested. Yeah. So whatever slopy land is there, because it has many micro habitats, we call it as, which is supporting n number of wildlife species, right from tiny insects to bird to reptile or whatnot. So that's how you really need to maintain the original lay of the land. Even contour trenches to certain extent may disturb it. So you really need to take help of some expert while you work on the land. And then this last point, which is very important, for any plant species, water is not really needed. It's just the soil moisture which is needed. So plants need soil moisture to grow. So enhance the soil moisture holding capacity of the soil. So how to do that? So you really need to apply certain restoration techniques. So one of the main techniques is protection, through which existing grasses grow up. So the biomass, which we call it as, it enhances, and the same biomass acts like organic matter, and if we just keep it on the ground, it acts as a mulching layer to the soil. So it doesn't get heated up in summer, its temperature is regulated, and this organic matter continuously goes into the soil as a food to the microbes which are there in the soil. So that cycle gets completed. Organic matter continuously going in the soil, feeding microbes continuously converting into in very apt form which can be absorbed by the plants. Yeah. So we really need to make the soil sustainable so that this nutrient cycle which we have learned back in school days, to take its shape. So once we do that, then the next part is selection of species. So we suggest that you restore the soil for initial 2 to 3 years if it's too barren, and then do plantation. So it totally depends on the land where we do plantation. So here we suggest that select diverse native plants. So again, diversity is very important. You can't have 1 or 2 species, and both common and rare. So many times, say if it is, have you gone to Pune Hills, some of you? So if you've seen that there are all acacia species, बाभूळ म्हणतात मराठीत, बाभूळचेच सगळे भाऊबंद आहेत. So when it comes to plantation on Pune Hills, that acacia species are the most suitable. They would grow like very easily. And along with, there are certain many species like Moi, Salai, Palash, Pangara, then ficus species like Umber, Word, Pimper. So n number of diverse species are there which can be planted on Pune Hills. Yeah, but right now Forest Department, means earlier, few years back, they would plant only one single species which is called as Gliricidia. Yeah, so even today if you see the patches with native plant and the patches with monoculture, you will clearly see the difference in the regeneration and also in the diversity. Then also select diversity of plant habits. Like trees should be selected, of course, but along with that, shrubs, climbers, grasses also should be selected for plantations. So many times when we go to nursery, they would always suggest you only trees. Yeah. So it is always suggested that if we wish to mimic forest, we must have all plant habits, including shrubs, herbs, grasses, everything. Then if soil is very poor, then phase out plantations. Like say initial 3 years, you can select all hardy plants, as I told you about Pune Hills. And then 4th year onwards, you can maybe select very rare and special species. Like in case of Pune, there are certain very rare species like Padar or Mojo. If you have heard of in Vidarbha region, Mojo is a very common tree, and that used to be here on Pune Hills few years back, but now it's quite rare. So you can have those rare species little later once your microclimate on the land is really set to have this special species. Yeah, so we have this list. I'll just show you that list also. Then the third point is about seed dispersal. So it's not necessary that every time you do plantation of saplings, but you can also disperse seeds of native plants. And here we have given just few common species like mango, jamun, karvanda, behda, shivan, palas. So these are the common species which grow almost all across India, almost in all zones, high rainfall to low rainfall. So these are very few common plants. But of course, if you're going to do seed dispersal in Sahyadri, there could be many more seeds in addition to this. If you are going to do seed dispersal in drier parts like Fulton and Satara and all these arid parts, then of course there would be certain different plants would be there. So you need to just look out for that. Then area for dispersal must not be totally barren. Again, it would be just waste, right? Because if soil doesn't have germination capacity, the seeds would remain just like that and they would just get decomposed with monsoon. So that's why it should not be totally barren. And if at all you wish to disperse the seed, you just throw it in some shrub cluster. So काहीतरी आडोसा पाहिजे तर मग ते उगवून येऊ शकेल. So that's very necessary. And dispersal can be done, of course, at the onset of monsoon, maybe not late monsoons but initial weeks of monsoon. So seed dispersal is also a very good practice. And then the last point is execution of plantation. So how you do plantation is very important. So many times this plantation time is very important. So people say that you must do plantation in month of June, maybe on the 7th June or so, but nowadays monsoon is so erratic. So we say that if at all you have irrigation available throughout the year, you can do plantation any time of the year. So scientifically, plants, they need sunlight and water and of course appropriate soil conditions to grow. So if all these three are available, you can do plantation any time of the year, but except for the high rainfall area. Say for example, you are doing plantation in Mahabaleshwar, we suggest to do it after monsoon, because it almost pours during monsoon. So if you plant this tiny saplings in the month of June, then many times they get washed away, or they are not able to sustain through that wind and that heavy rains. Yeah. So in high rainfall area, you can do it after monsoon, but in all other rainfall areas, you can do it throughout the year if irrigation is available. And if irrigation is not available, of course, at the onset of monsoon, then this is very typical procedure to take a pit. So it should be 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, done in a very nice way. It is suggested that you take a pit in the month of May, when sun is really very harsh, so that the pits get heated and whatever unwanted pests are there, they get repelled. Okay. Then you can also sprinkle some ash on the bottom and the sides of the pits, so that it just stays away. Then fill the pits with side soil. This is very important, because many times when we do plantation, we import soil from somewhere else. So when we import the soil, we really damage the soil from where we get the soil, isn't it? So is it really making greenery or destroying greenery is the issue. So that's why you can make your own soil, or at the most, if at all you wish to import, you can use only 30% of good quality soil and use rest of the murum which is already available on your soil. So trees definitely grow well even in soft murum, even in hard murum, certain species. Yeah. Then use good composted cow dung, so it should be 30%, plus compost maybe 2 kgs. Gandur khat jala manto. Then cocoa pit. So cocoa pit is just to hold the moisture for that particular pit. Yeah. It could be 500 gram. Then neem cake, again to repel the insects, and plus leaf litter and grasses. Maybe if you just chop the crop residue and grasses and you mix all this thing together and then fill the pit, then you really ensure that the growth of that particular sapling is really well throughout the year. Yeah? And you, of course, as per the location of the pit, you really need to take care of that particular sapling. And we always suggest that you should plant sapling at least 2 to 3 years old, which is grown in a big back size. So back size has to be really big. So many times in market nowadays you get very tall plant, like 5 feet tall plants, but the back size is very small, maybe 6 inches or so. So what happens in that back, that root gets coiled, okay, and that particular sapling, it becomes very susceptible to wind. It falls very easily. So that's why you need to have a big size back sapling, but in big size bag. That's very necessary. Yeah. So if you follow this particular procedure, then your plantations obviously would be a little more successful. Then maintenance is the main thing. So whenever you have some X budget to do plantation, we always suggest people to cut down and keep some chunk of budget for maintenance, because that is very necessary. So as usual, you do a heap of soil, Jala Manto Apan Marathi, all around the sapling. Then the regular watering, and in that we definitely suggest drip irrigation system. By using, there are many methods. Like the usual method is of course drip lines, but you can use earthen pots, you can use plastic bottles, and have drip irrigation system which allows water to go till the root of that particular plant, and it doesn't go waste. Also evaporation losses are avoided. Then mulching at the base of each plant. So as we talk, this is very necessary to improve soil moisture. So you continuously keep some grasses all around the sapling. Then bamboo stick to support, so that the plant doesn't get away with the wind or it doesn't fall. Then create shade if necessary. So sometimes for certain saplings you might need to create shade, as shown in that particular photograph. And of course, protection is very must. Protect the land from grazing, trampling and fire. So just to summarize what we've talked, that assure protection from grazing and fire for sure. Before we do plantation, we must know whether that land is going to get protected from grazing and fire. Yeah? So there are also many techniques to do that. Then retain existing natural structure of the land. Don't disturb that, but have pits just around that. Maintain existing diversity on the land. Diversity is really a key word for ecological plantations. Then work on soil and moisture for 2 to 3 years. It's too barren, of course. Select appropriate native plants. So native is very important because we have not really talked about non-native plants, that why not to go for non-natives. So just to tell you quickly, many times this non-native plant, they are not associated with the local biodiversity, that is one thing. And also there is this chance that they become invasive. Like say for example, water hyacinth in our rivers, it has really become invasive through last 100 years. And now you see what has happened to our rivers. Same is the case with subabu, same is the case with Australian acacia. So they get escaped in natural areas and they suppress the original native diversity. Yeah. So of course few non-natives are quite fine, like Gulmohar is not that invasive. But we have so many, as I told you, we have 17,000 native alternatives. So why really we need to go for non-native is the question. And even if you like some non-native plant which is really beautiful looking, you can have it in the garden in cities, yeah, at maybe just in the backyard of your home, but not for mass plantations on the slopes in the natural areas for sure. So we really need to know this threat by non-natives. Yeah, that's why we suggest not to have any non-natives at least in this mass plantation drive. So that's why select appropriate native plants is the main thing. Then assure irrigation for first 2 years, and after 2 to 3 years, plants are on their own. And if you assure protection to the soil, then soil moisture is really set to take care of plants after 3 years. Yeah, you don't need to irrigate these native plants because they are very hardy and they are very appropriate to that climate. Then of course ensure protection and mulching of naturally growing grass. So this is main thing when we do plantation. Yeah. So that's all. So here we have so this list is also there on our website. So you can just go to oikos.in publications page, and even this presentation is there. So you can select. So here what we have done, we have just categorized this plant in Konkan, Sahyadri, Desh or Central Maharashtra and Vidarbha. And all these common plants are there which are propagated commonly all over Maharashtra, which you will get maybe not very easily, but of course in certain nurseries you get all these plants, and you can just see the mark, and whatever appropriate species are, you can select from there. So these are tree species. Then there are certain shrubs and climbers are also there, which are given in the list. Yeah, so thank you. If you have any questions, just let me know.
The weather pattern has changed over the years. So what was a native plant, let's say 50 years back, may not find the right climate in the same place after 50 years, let's say now.
Yeah, but this nativity is basically defined over maybe millions of years. So the non-natives are maybe just the plants which we take across the continents. Yeah, so humans basically take it, but native plants are evolved in that particular soil. So if it's Pune Hills, they are evolved when the lava was coming out, when it was getting cooled, and when the physical forms were getting shaped. So right from that time, this native diversity is getting shaped. So even if weather patterns are changing, yeah, to certain extent it might affect. But if the original forest is protected, it won't really, the weather pattern won't affect that kind of protected forest patch. That's why we had suggested in that particular slide that you refer to earlier gazetteers. Or even one of our other presentations, we also suggest to study reference sites. Like you visit certain sacred groves or you visit government forest areas wherein you would find the original composition of the forest. So if you do that along with experts, that is suggested.
So just wanted to give a couple of comments. So Ketaki actually been involved in a lot of environmental restoration projects in and around Pune for many years. And she's currently actively engaged in many such projects right now. So any of you who are interested in knowing more about this area, I would suggest doing a site visit with her. So because then, at least for me, it was an eye-opener for the first time that, you know, when you go, we don't have a tendency to notice trees. I mean, if I ask anyone, can you name a tree? Chances are that, no, you will not be able to. So first, knowing what trees are surrounding us. And secondly, when you go to a site visit, you will realize how many different varieties of vegetation is there, and each vegetation has a name, classification, purpose, properties. It's a wealth of knowledge that we are completely unaware of. And the best way to learn that is to just be on site and kind of experience it firsthand. So any of you are interested, I'll be happy to organize your trips with her on site sometime
Yeah,
to
sure.
get a feel for it, because this is more of a subject to experience rather than to read in books and kind of comprehend.
Even Praveen would know now many species.
No, I think every time I'm learning something new. So even today's presentation, I learned something new. So obviously it takes time to absorb.
So thanks to him, even on his land, of course he had intention to have forest on that land, but many times private landowners, they would like to have, little fancy things. But owners like him are really our very favorite clients. So he had almost 50% of his land is dedicated to all original forest species from that particular area. And I'm sure, as you're saying, maybe after 50 years, that 8 acres or 4 acres patch would have some value. Because that time, I think hardly any forest patches would be there. So, thanks, Praveen.
And I think if anyone know more about her, do a search on net. She has given a lot of interviews on Z Marathi and other programs, so you will find those videos. And I think, and after snack hour, feel free to exchange your thoughts and ideas. But don't want to take time away. Anybody has any questions?
Okay, thank you. So I would just like to close with this Ecological Society's course.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Is it fine?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so basically I went to this particular field of ecological conservation and restoration just because of one course I did 15 years back from one NGO named Ecological Society. So now me and Mansi, my partner, both of us are also trustee and faculty for that course. So we conduct this course throughout the year. Maybe it starts in June and ends in April. And it's basically for professional. It's interdisciplinary course, and whoever is interested in nature and nature conservation can join that course. And it's only on Saturdays. So there are 2 lectures from 2 to 4 and 5 to 7. And we have 4 camps. So the longest camp is Himalayan camps. And other 3 are like over the weekends, grassland, forest and coastal camp. And this course is really something. So in that course we try to offer a perspective to look at nature, to look at surroundings, to look at yourself, of course. So it's really interesting course, and that really triggered us to start this ecological consultancy and work in this particular field full time. But of course, so the people who come to that course, they come from varied background. There are architects, there are engineers, there are IT engineers, there are advocates, there are housewives. Yeah, so various kind of people, and it's very interesting. So I think if you are fond of this subject, you can surely join that course.
How long is that course?
1 year, not full year, 8 to 9 months, July to April.
Every Saturday.
Every Saturday. And then we have 4 camps and few practicals. So we take people around Pune Hill to maybe Mona River just to look at the status of our natural elements around us. Yeah, so you can go through our website. So oikos.in, we have this Ecological Society's link also on our website. So you can just check the course contents. Yeah.
I think
you.
just one thing I recall. I think
One comment Kate made a couple of years ago, which sort of caught my attention. Some of us who are now in our late 40s, when we were kids, we used to see more birds around our house. I think these days you only see pigeons and crows. So if you're curious why that's the case, Pune is such a green city, but still you only see pigeons and crows. You don't see any other birds. If you're interested, have a word with her and she'll explain you why.
Chalo. Thank you. We'll stop.
Thank you.